Hey folks, I guess we're on time. I know we were running behind a bit. That's great. Yes, we are on time now. So hopefully, we will also end on time. My talk will end directly on time. My name is Sarjeel Yusuf. I'm a product manager at Datadog, working on a new product that we recently announced called Workflow Automation, right? And what I want to talk about today is I want to talk about the best practices of automation, right? I don't want to talk about, I'm not here to talk about what we built, but mainly what we learned in what we were building, right? And this is because, my story starts when we were, sorry. The story starts when I joined Datadog around a year and a half ago, or almost 2 years ago. And we decided that we wanted to build an automation product that helps our customers respond to the observability insights that we were already collecting. So who's familiar with Datadog, right? Who's not familiar with Datadog? What? I'm kidding. Well, Datadog, for just a quick overview, Datadog is a monitoring tool. Your basic monitoring tool that collects metrics, logs, and traces, and then gives you signals in the form of alerts or security signals indicating when something is going wrong, right? And we wanted to then build the next step, which was the workflow automation component, right? And as we were building this, we wanted to target different types of customers or different types of folks in companies, which was our dev, SRE, and security personas. And as we were building this, what we realized, as many product managers realize early in their career, is that we're very bad at building products. I'm not Datadog, product managers are very bad at building products, right? And this is best encapsulated by something that an amazing staff engineer on my team said. When we were in the early days working with some early design partners, early adopters in building this product, what he said was, Phil Sarin is his name, and what he said was, Sarjeel, the things that we thought were important turned out not to be important, and the things that we didn't think were important turned out to be super important. And today, what I want to talk about is those things that were super important. And we learned these lessons by talking to various customers from various different industries with various team sizes, working on, various parts of the business. So we spoke to security teams in small startups, to SRE teams in large enterprise companies with more than 5,000 engineers working on keeping the lights on, right? We spoke to companies working in healthcare who were worried about compliancy in the US, HIPAA compliancy in the US, and we spoke to a small online kitchenware selling customer based in the UK, right? And what we realized is that there is not a single silver bullet in how somebody sets up automation. But what there is a series of best practices that somebody can implement to make sure that your automation not only assures that you can respond to disruptions and security threats as soon as possible, making sure that the customer impact, that your customers don't see the impact or don't see major impact, but also you can perform all of this automation at scale and with comfort, right? So from talking to all of these customers, what we realized was that there were four major themes. These themes were, we want to make sure that the automation is scalable. We want to have workflows that scale, that they're reusable. We want to make sure that this automation is targeted. It gets, that the right automation gets kicked off from the right point and immediately resolves the right resource or remediates the root cause, basically. We wanted to make sure that this automation is secure. What we're building is essentially a robot to emulate an ops person, right? just like any other ops person, this robot now needs permissions to go out and perform those tasks, to behave like a real individual, like a real employee, right? And at the end of the day, we also wanted to make sure that all of this automation was trackable, that we could monitor, that we could understand that this automation is running, and it's not just, we don't just build a script and throw it out in a black box and then forget about it, right? So if we start with the first theme, reusable workflows, right? As I mentioned, we needed these workflows to scale. Customers that we were speaking to needed their workflows to scale, right? They wanted to make sure that the different automation that different teams were going to implement with our product didn't create havoc and bring them away from standardization across their organization, right? They wanted to make sure that, all of this automation was also something that could be shared across the organization. So if a team identifies a way to automate a certain part of the process, they could share that knowledge with their other team members, right? Allowing this knowledge share capability was essential for a lot of the larger customers that we were speaking to, right? Because at the end of the day, we talk about how we want to standardize processes across the entire organization, while maintaining flexibility that each team can go about and be a bit more agile, right? So at the end so what we wanted was, we needed workflows that could scale, that could be modularized and shared, and could be flexible enough that they can be adopted by different teams for similar yet different use cases. Similar yet different, right? It's kind of an oxymoron over there. So let me tell you a story of one of our customers. So this is a workflow that one of our customers built with our product, right? And what this workflow does, it essentially gets automatically triggered from a monitor alert, from an alert in Datadog, indicating that one of their services is down, is disrupted. And what this automation does is that it gets context about that service from the alert, and then it notifies the right person. Again, because in Datadog we have all of that context of who owns what service, so it notifies the right person in Slack, and then it sends an event into EventBridge, where their automation pipelines that are maintained in AWS are then kicked off. And then it goes and checks whether the monitor is all right, and if the monitor was okay, it goes ahead and sends the message that, oh, this disruption has been resolved. Now, this is an example from one monitor, right? And we say that if the monitor is in alert state, then kick off this workflow, this pipeline, basically. And what they had tens of monitors similar to this, and they wanted to reuse the same workflow in all of those different monitors, right? So what they did was, they created a workflow that took variables and operated on variables, and those variables were then passed from their alerting mechanism, which in this case was the Datadog monitor, right? And that's just one example of how you can build flexible or reusable workflows. So they built one pipeline. That means one automation pipeline to maintain, one resource to maintain, but a resource that is then used across your observability, across your monitoring and observability stack. The next theme is targeted workflows, to make sure that we are kicking off the right workflow from the right place. And again, smaller companies didn't really care about this, because you see, you have like one team, you have two teams maybe, and everybody's got all of that information in their mind. Everybody's friends, everybody goes out for a drink at the end of the day. Everybody knows what everybody else is working on. However, in larger companies, you're probably building a lot of these scripts, right? How do you know which script to run from where, right? So we need to make sure that, so a lot of customers wanted to make sure that they know which team owns which script. They know that only the right scripts show up in the right signals that are pertinent to that specific team. They wanted to make sure that these scripts are also constantly updated, right? It is you when you build automation, you wanted to you build automation with the goal that you want to reduce your mean time to resolve and remediate, right? Your mean time to respond, basically. And they wanted to make sure that, okay, if we have a workflow that we've built, we know who owns this now. Now that we know who owns this, we know who maintains this. Okay, we know where this workflow is supposed to be kicked off from. That's great. Another thing that they wanted to do was they also wanted to make sure that they wanted to make sure that, okay, this workflow is constantly updated with the changes that we're making in our systems, right? So they also wanted to constantly think about the automation that they're going to run to reduce the MTTR, and they would include it in their game days. So make sure to include, if you have automation that's running, make sure to always include that automation and evaluate that automation in game days and see how you can always improve that automation. And then at the end of the day, you always want to make sure that this automation is that every intern that comes in, every new hire that comes in, every new member that comes in is always made aware of this automation, because you don't want them to try to start responding to a signal that is already being responded to by an automated pipeline, by an automated workflow, right? So you want to kind of reduce the confusion over there. So just to give you an example, we had a customer that both had a security team using Datadog and an SRE team using Datadog, and their security team was they just had one process that they wanted to automate. They just wanted to make sure that they can block IPs, right? Where the SRE team, we want to scale up auto scaling groups, we want to restart services, we want to perform some kubectl commands, all of that. And so they had a bunch of automation that they were thinking about. But the security team, we only want to block IPs. Simple. So what we decided to do was we decided to work with our security team to make sure that if there's a security responder that is going and looking at specific signals, we immediately allow them to click on a button to kick off the block IP workflow directly, and not make the security responder have to go through multiple workflows just to find the right workflow that they want to kick off, right? So again, if you want to actually leverage automation and reap the benefits, don't make your team members try to dig through multiple different automation scripts to kick off the right one. Just put a link to it in the signal in your alert, right? And make sure that everybody is aware of what automation exists, and make sure that the ownership is clear. This is a theme that's also very important, and this theme is around security, right? With automation, you can do a lot of powerful things. You can essentially, remediate disruptions, or if you have bad automation, you can take down your entire prod environment, right? Who's ever written a script and to automate something and then has worried about, taking down prod? Yep. Yeah. Yes, a lot of people. In fact, one of the previous companies that I worked in went through a major outage because they were running an automation script that didn't work on a specific edge case, and then that edge case happened, and the company was basically down for I think 3 or 4 days. It was actually a major outage. It was a major company, something that I know everybody here in this room, a company that I know everybody here has used. I can't say it now, but you can check out my LinkedIn to see where I worked before. But yeah, automation is scary. Automation is dangerous, and it can be. You can try to test automation, and you can make sure that automation works, but you also need to make sure that it doesn't fall in the wrong hands, right? And it's not to run in the wrong time. So this is where the concept of access control becomes very important. And honestly, when we were building the workflow automation product in the early days, we didn't even think about access control. It was when financial institutions, when healthcare companies, and when small security companies based in Israel told us that they were not going to use this product unless it had access control. That's when we started thinking about it. Okay, for this product to be to go GA, we need to have some form of access control. So when you're thinking about access control and you're thinking about how you give your automated scripts or who you give permission to run these automated scripts, always make sure to think about, okay, if we didn't have this automated script, who in the team could actually go out and run these tasks in the tools where we need to perform these tasks actually, right? Always think about how you are securing your credentials in the tool that you're using, right? Because essentially, if you're writing a basic partial script or you're using a tool such as workflow automation, at the end of the day, you need to add your credentials to authorize that script, that automation entity to go and perform this task. So think about how you are providing these credentials. Are you providing them in the tool, or are you making the tool or the script go out and fetch these credentials from a vault such as HashiCorp? Think about how you manage your credentials, right? Also, make sure that you always audit the actions that are taken by the workflow, right? Make sure that if you create an automated pipeline, don't just put that automated pipeline in a black box and forget about it. Make sure that you're constantly auditing what actions are being taken and what changes are being made by the automated pipeline. This is especially essential if you're working in a company where you need to meet some compliancy regulations, right? Because the auditor will come and the auditor will say, okay, what is this, ID, or who is this ID that went and accessed these IAM credentials in AWS, right? To access this database that had all of this PII information about your patients, right? So make sure you're always auditing this, all of these actions, right? Not only what the actions are doing, but also who is triggering the automated pipeline, if it's being triggered automatically or being triggered manually, right? And then always review the permissions that you're giving to your automated pipelines, and make sure that, because if without automation, maybe you could have gone in and you could have seen certain data, right? But now with this, what the robot, what this automated pipeline is doing is that it's going out and it's also looking at data and it's collecting this data. When you look at the data, this data gets registered in your mind. But when the automated pipeline goes out and you audit this information, this data gets recorded somewhere. Then think about who gets to go and see those audit logs, who gets to go see that history. A lot of people actually forget about this. A lot of people forget that if you automate something, you are actually leaving a trail of information somewhere in a history, in a law, in some history log, right, of that automation. So then you need to also think about, okay, is that information itself sensitive? And then who gets to go and look at those historical logs of that automated pipeline, right? So, just to give you another story. So we were working with a large bank, basically, right? Those are one of our early adopters, and Datadog does this. Datadog, when we build products, we work with a lot of early adopters, right? And this bank is one of those customers that we work with a lot on a lot of our products. They're usually an early adopter for a lot of things. So I remember when I was going to that meeting, I was like, oh, this is going to be very easy. I'm just going to tell them about this new product, and then we'll have one more design partner, one more early adopter that I can go tell my boss about, right? And I go into that meeting, and I'm like, oh, hey man, like, I know you've been working with us. Hey, by the way, this is a new product that we want to turn on for you. And they're like, wait, no, what are you doing? You see, Datadog traditionally has always been that tool that reads your information. So we always needed to just provide read-only permissions on our AWS IAM roles. But what you're now building, Sarjeel, that requires the right permissions. And the way that your current integrations are set up and the way that your current permission models are set up, we are not comfortable in getting this product turned on. And I'm like, oh, damn. Okay. We went back to the board. I went back to my team. We told them, okay, you know what? There's this concept that we kind of forgot about. It's called security. I think we should build it. And then we built it, and what we actually did. So, like, for example, in the workflow automation product, we actually built the security part separate from the overall Datadog security part, just because of how more granular you want to have security and when you're automating things. So, for example, with a lot of your cloud providers, you have the concept of identity access management, and you have the concept of policies, and the permissions that these policies that you associate to these policies. So, for example, there's one SRE team that can read DynamoDB tables, and there's another team that can block IPs in AWS WAF, for example, right? And so you need to make sure that you can authenticate different workflows with different policies and different IAM roles. And then you need to also then make sure who gets to use these IAM roles, who gets to use these credentials in building their workflows, right? Don't just make a one IAM policy to rule them all and put it into your automation product, because it may be good when you trust the 5 other engineers on your team, but it could be a bit difficult to scale that as your business scales. And finally, I want to talk about the last theme that we learned, right, when we were talking to our customers, was hey, I want to treat the way that I build automation similar to the way that I build any other service in my application, right? I want to monitor this automated pipeline the same way that I want to monitor my Kubernetes cluster, or for the same reasons, right? Because automation essentially is very critical, right? And if your automation starts to fail, and if you do not know that automated pipeline that is supposed to restart a very important service when an alert comes in is no longer working, then that could create havoc. Then all of a sudden, your automation that you had set up to reduce the impact on your customers becomes the opposite, and it actually prolongs the impact on your customers, because you just thought that automated pipeline would solve the problems. Therefore, you no longer need to set up an on-call and get woken up at 3 a.m. in the morning, right? So make sure that, especially your critical workflow. So again, there's some automated processes about, like, for example, generating reports. Yeah, you don't. Maybe it works someday. Maybe it doesn't work the other day. Is it mission critical? If it's not, you don't need to worry about it. But for the mission critical workflows, the one that you're using for self-healing and auto remediation, make sure that you monitor the health of those workflows. Are those workflows failing consecutively? If they are, maybe there's something wrong in that workflow, right? Send an alert, get somebody to look at it, right? You also want to make sure that you want to perform version control on your workflow. So as you're recalibrating your workflows, maybe as we mentioned, you're having a game day, you realize that you can improve your workflow. As you recalibrate your workflows and your pipeline and your automated pipelines, make sure to have version controls of them. So and make sure to get them approved and reviewed. Again, if you would change anything in your infrastructure, you would probably get that reviewed, right? Make sure if you change anything in your automated pipeline, you get that reviewed, right? And what that means is make sure you manage your automation as code. Then you should also try to synchronize your maintenance windows. So if you are, let's say you are performing some maintenance on a service that you have a workflow attached to, if that service is supposed to go through maintenance, then make sure that your workflow doesn't get kicked off or triggered due to any faulty signal that is coming out of that service that's going under maintenance, because if you may actually have a whole chain of automation getting kicked off, right? So always make sure that you synchronize your automation and your response to the maintenance windows of your services and your monitors, basically. For example, again, another story that was that there was a customer that, again, a small customer this time, but they were running a very important automation to block IPs in signal science, right? And they had built this workflow, and again, this is a security workflow, right? They had built this workflow, and they had actually, you build this workflow, and then as you do with many things, you forget about it. Like, oh, this is just supposed to work. You just forget about it, right? What ended up happening was that due to some changes in the way that they were setting up their infrastructure, that workflow started failing. But they didn't know that it was failing until somebody decided to go create a new workflow and went into the workflow console and saw that, oh, the first workflow that we have has a list of failed executions. So how many times was somebody trying to attack us, and how many times did we think that we blocked that attack by blocking the IP, but we actually didn't? That's pretty scary, right? So always make sure that you try to monitor your workflows. And because of that, actually, we then realized that, we should actually provide this type of notification that your workflows are failing natively, right? But again, if you're using any other type of automation, always make sure that you're aware that this automation exists and it's being monitored. Right. So thank you so much. Those are the 4 types of themes that we encountered as we were building this product. And I hope that our lessons and the stories of these customers are lessons that you folks can learn and take back to your teams as you folks set up your automation. So thank you so much.
Thank you. That was a really interesting talk. My question is more about, from this process or the learnings when you was building this product, what was kind of the takeaway in terms of how you'll build products in the future? Was this, I wouldn't say the failings, but were the learnings more of a case of the sample size or the user research just wasn't efficient enough, wasn't sufficient enough? Or is there more of an fundamental issue in product design and building products about assumptions? Because I've heard a similar story when Google was talking about building some of their products and to do around the health apps. What are the learnings in terms of on the high level building products?
Yeah. So all of these learnings are from our early design partners, right? So this is before we GA'd the product, right? And this is actually, like, I personally believe, and again, on the record, I'm not saying this for Datadog, but I honestly believe that this is the right product management culture, in the sense that you work with customers or early adopters to learn what these customers want, what is an automation. Because, we had a idea of what is a perfect automation tool. But again, another staff engineer, and staff engineers have a lot of wisdom, told me that perfect is the enemy of good. We believed that in the beginning, in the first 6 months of building this product, that we believe we know what a perfect automation product looks like. We showed it to the early adopters. We showed it to those banks. We showed it to those healthcare companies, and they said, no, this is not good, right? So I believe that this is actually how products should be built. We should open it up. You should give your products to early adopters, learn from them, and when you feel that that you've learned enough, then GA it. And when you GA, that's up to how you evaluate what is good enough, right? And even then, you have you're going from a small sample size of early adopters or early customers that you work with on a day-to-day basis to more general and wider audience, right? In that case, and also then pricing. Then now all of a sudden we've also introduced pricing, so now that also affects the way people perceive your product. And so I would always say that, again, in Datadog, what we do is the first 6 months of GA, we really learn from how customers start using the product with a pricing model on top of that now.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, great talk, by the way. So my question is around the Datadog workflow automation product itself. So I think this space is very crowded, a lot of players. And each of them, either it could be a very prescriptive way that how the automation should work, or it could be very customized, right? I mean, how you build the automation. Mm-hmm. So what's the approach Datadog has taken in terms of making sure that, each and every use case has its own sort of requirements, automation requirements. Yep. Is it quite flexible to integrate with other open source automation tools, or it is very prescriptive in the way the workflow should be built and automated?
Right. That's actually a very good question. So right now, the product itself is not integratable with you cannot use it kind of like a standalone product, right? You can only trigger it. You can only kick off a automation from a Datadog signal. That being said, we are currently working on opening this up to other to like be a bit more flexible. But the core of your question, which is like, should it be customizable as you want, or should it be prescriptive? It's honestly a combination of both. And this is actually where it depends if you are a security user or if you are a general SRE, person, right? So, for example, for SRE, you have set up your infrastructure that's probably very custom to your business and to your business culture, right? With security, you know that you want to block the attacker either through their IP or through their user credentials. So depending on the process that you want to automate, you can be very prescriptive or you could be very general. We started off with a very more generic view, and now what you'll notice as we keep on developing this product is we're kind of becoming more prescriptive. And especially with generative AI coming out, we know that we can kind of tell that, okay, this is your signal, this is what the problem is. Okay, let's try to recommend the way to solve it. And this is not just Datadog, this is almost every tool that's out there that's not doing this. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Thank you. It helps.
Yes, on the back of that previous question, you mentioned that is specific to Datadog signals, and in terms of what's been triggered, is that can that extend to be multi-platform, to sort of trigger things in different platforms?
Yep.
That's the first question, and the second one is, is there a Terraform provider for the automation part? I was just quickly looking at Datadog, Terraform providers, and I just, from a very first look, I didn't see the automation
right
one.
Both of them are good questions. So your first question, can we trigger pipelines in other platforms? Yes, that is the goal, right? You have your automation in various different platforms, but those different platforms probably don't have the context of the disruption that Datadog is offering, right? So what you can do is you can use the workflow product to collect all of those insights, make the right event, and then send that event into the automation provider where you want to kick off the pipeline. So that is, and we are constantly integrating. We have over like 300 plus integrations today, right? And we're constantly expanding. So if you have something in mind, please let us know and we'll prioritize it, right? Now coming to the Terraform provider, that is a very big priority for us. As we said, we just recently went generally available, right, with this product. We just recently released it to the whole world. And now we're working on the Terraform provider, actually. So it is, hopefully, if I come back next year and if we meet next year, you'll see it. Yeah.
That's the estimated.
That's the estimated time. Yeah. Any other questions?
No.
Well then, thank you so much, folks. And